You're listening to the Journey podcast. The Journey is a ministry of Southcrest Baptist Church for those in college or college-aged. We hope this podcast helps you find your greatest pleasure and purpose in Jesus. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Journey podcast. My name is Tyler. This is David Maddox. This is not David Maddox.
Nope. It's me, Ryan.
Ryan Foster.
Yep.
Ryan is a resident here on staff with us in the Journey Ministry. Just a really cool person. Yeah. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
It's the morning and it's a little rainy outside, so I feel like I'm a little drowsy more so than normal, but
Yeah. I wasn't expecting it.
I wasn't either. I walked outside and I was like, oh. So, but I love the rain, so it's a nice change.
Yeah. I like it for a period. And then I'm like, all right, time to move on.
But doesn't it rain all the time in Houston, where y'all lived for a while?
Yeah, but it's also like kind of sunny too. So like
that's fair.
Like I don't really like the dreary.
Okay.
Like it just kind of like makes me depressed.
Oh.
Like if I had to live in what's that? If I had to live like in Grey's Anatomy.
Or like up in Seattle, it rains like every day up there.
You know where Grey's Anatomy is?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
I have no idea.
Yeah, you told me that was your favorite show.
No, I did not. I did not say that. It is a good show, but
I know. You
like
said
30
Vampire
seasons.
Diaries, actually.
No, I didn't. I did not. That show's also good, but no.
See? I knew it. Vampire Diaries. Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's rainy today, but we're
here.
We're here. We're excited to talk. David could not be here today, so he said, you know what? Let's one-up him.
Oh. I didn't say that.
Let's put someone in this seat that will elevate it to a new level.
It's a lot of pressure. We'll see.
So one of the things that we do on this podcast is we kind of recap our Tuesday night messages, and we're in this series right now called Is God Talking? And we're kind of just asking the question, like, does God talk to me? Does he have a plan for me? What is his will for my life? How do I know what that is? And last night, depending on when you're listening to this, but at TNG, we kind of talked about oftentimes we feel like we're waiting on God to move, and so does waiting have to be miserable? Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, do you ever feel like you're in a waiting period?
Oh, yes. I feel like I'm in a waiting period. I finally get either some kind of answer, whether it's what I want or not. And then I enter another waiting period of seeing how that's going to turn out or like the next step in that process. But I'm in a big fat waiting period right now. So last night it was like you were talking straight to me. I was like, oh my gosh. So
big fat waiting period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Waiting's not fun.
No.
But I think what we often forget is that, and I didn't really hit on this last night, but God loves to use the waiting period to mold us and create us into the people that he wants us to be. And so I think we so often get into this waiting period and we're like, man, how fast can I get out of it?
Yeah.
But the waiting period can be some of the most important parts of our lives. Why do you think people hate waiting so much?
I think people just want the answers to their questions immediately. And I think you kind of talked about this yesterday, but in our culture, everything is so fast paced. Like TikTok, you literally can swipe and find what you want, kind of that instant gratification. And waiting is very much the opposite of that. You really have to just be patient, which I feel like a lot of people are not, myself included. Mm-hmm. And then I think you also have to fight the temptation of trying to get to your outcome your own way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. One of the things we talked on was there has to be kind of a mind shift from like waiting is inactivity to like waiting is actually active. Like it's not just sitting around waiting for something to happen. But it's more so like focusing on today while also recognizing like God is working in your life. Like he's gone before you, he's behind you, he's beside you, he's walking beside you, and he's moving in all the details. We say hindsight is 2020, but like I think we can all look back on our life and like look at all the times like how God has weaved things together to bring us where we're at right now. And so if we could just like keep that perspective, I don't know that waiting would be so difficult, like, yes, I think we do get impatient, right? But if we just remember, man, like God has called us just to focus on today and to do what he's called us to do today while remembering he has good in store for us. I think that can make it a little bit easier,
Yeah. And I think he's also something that I've learned, especially since I came to college, is that the Lord very much is like trying to teach you something while you're waiting. And I feel like a lot of times I'm so focused on point B that I miss all of the things he's trying to teach me and prepare me for before I get there. And so then sometimes it's like, sometimes I feel like I'm waiting because I'm not prepared, and the Lord knows that, and he's guarding my heart in that, and he's kind of, like you were saying, like helping mold and shape me into the person I need to be before I can get the answer I want.
Yeah.
Or maybe just the answer that the Lord has, period. But I think also it's just one of those things like you'll miss it if you're wishing and wanting something that you don't have. But you can say that about a lot of things, not just necessarily waiting. So
yeah. I think that's a really good point. Like, man, God has some amazing things in store for you, like right now, today, but you can find yourself missing out on those things if all your focus is like, how do I get to this next part as fast as I can? I think that's a really, really good point. This is kind of putting you on the spot, but anything from last night that you like took away or stood out to you, or you're like, man, Tyler he hit that, like.
yes, I don't know exactly how you phrased it, which is kind of what we've already been talking about, but it's like kind of this dialogue that you're having with God, and it's like, I want to be there, but the Lord is like, but I have you here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what purpose, am I supposed to be serving here?
Yeah.
Rather than there.
Yeah, it's that idea in Psalm 37 when David talks about wait on the Lord and cultivate faithfulness, right? And so, like, what does it look like in our lives to cultivate faithfulness, to do good as we wait on God to act? And I think one of the things I said is, man, there's never like those moments when God has, like when my life feels like it's flourished, when I feel like he's shown up the most, when I feel like, man, I've just been blessed the most. It's those moments where I've just been passionate about Jesus, and focus on him. And, in verse 4, David says, like, delight in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. And I think we make it a lot more difficult than it really needs to be. Like, really, the focus for like you and I is, do we delight in the Lord? Do we find our joy, our passion, our purpose in him? Because when we do, the promise is that he'll give us the desires of our heart. Now, those desires may end up changing, right? Because the more we delight in the Lord, the more our desires will start to orient around what he desires for us. But still, he'll give you the desires of your heart as you delight in him. And I just think that's so important. And kind of as I was studying, that was one of the things that I just was like, man, God, help me delight in you. Like, help me to find joy in you, not the things that I'm trying to find gratification in, or the things that I'm trying to prop myself up, or, in this or that, but like, and just help me to be satisfied with you, I think that's what's really important. Yeah.
It's good.
No.
It's good.
Yeah. So I don't know. What do you feel like? I don't want to pry. But you said you feel like you're in a big fat waiting period. Is this because you're getting to the end of college?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot of big next steps that I have to make that I can't necessarily make right now.
Mm-hmm.
But those steps are going to impact what my future looks like for the next long time. So it's just one of those things where I'm just having to learn to trust, which has been really difficult. He knows because I've talked to him a lot about it, but it's been really challenging for me.
Mm-hmm.
So just trying to be patient and trust that what the Lord is preparing for me, he will make clear to me. Because I feel like I think that's for me what makes waiting so hard is that I don't necessarily have clarity about certain things. And so I think that is what makes the waiting for some people miserable, like what we were talking about kind of at the beginning of the sermon last night, and then also just kind of opening this podcast with that.
Yeah. The reason I think that's so important is because I would say 99% of the college students that I talk with get to that point where they're like, oh no, like I'm getting ready to graduate and I don't know.
I'm an adult.
Yeah. And if I'm a freshman, like hearing this podcast, like I remember when I was in school, like that wasn't on my mind, like, oh man, there's going to come a point where like the anxiety starts to build up because I don't know what's next. Right. But as a freshman, if I hear this, man, I think this is like gold for me. Like, take this in and like, man, let it root itself like deep in your heart. Because I love verse 5. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act. Like it doesn't, like David doesn't say, commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and there's a good chance He will. He says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do it. Like He'll act on your behalf. And I just think that's such, like, that frees us up, like to really not worry. If your sole focus is just to commit to the Lord and trust in Him, then you have nothing to worry about. He's going to act on your behalf. He's going to do what needs to be done. And I think, like, you better believe it's going to be a lot better than what you would want for yourself, And so, man, I think Psalm 37, like if I was there last night listening, and I would just, man, spend time in Psalm 37 this week. Like, just read it over and over again until it's like implanted in your heart. Trust in the Lord and do what is good. Dwell in the land and live securely, or cultivate faithfulness. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you your heart's desires. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will act, making your righteousness shine like the dawn, your justice like the noonday. Be silent before the Lord and wait expectantly before Him. Yeah, I think that's the idea of, man, be active, but wait dependently. Like, do good today while also being dependent upon God to move in your life. I think that's the key.
Okay. What would you say to someone? Because I think it's really easy.
You're not allowed to ask questions. I'm kidding.
Guys. I think it's really easy to like read that and know, but I think it's a different thing to like read it and like apply it and believe it in your heart. Because like I feel like sometimes like I've been in this situation where like I've read that and it's like, okay, I know that the Lord will give me the desires of my heart. Obviously, like what we've been talking about, the more time you spend with him, those desires will change. But it's like I know it up here, but I don't know it in here. Or like I don't it's kind of like this game of like I believe it some days, but then sometimes it's really hard. So I guess what would you say to somebody where that's the case, where it's like they know like this is what the scripture says, but how do I truly believe it when it's really hard?
You know, I think that's why it is so important to have let me say a couple of things. I think this is why it is so vital that you are connected to a church, not just to like a college ministry, right? Like not just to like students that are your same age. Like if you're connected to a church, you can get to know people that are a lot older than you, who have wisdom, not me, not that old, who have wisdom and who can tell you firsthand experiences of like, man, this is what happened in my life and how I saw God come through kind of over and over. I can tell you like, man, there are moments where, you know, so before Southcrest, we planted a church on Tech's campus called Storyline Church. And there were Sundays where I would, first off, church planting is, it's not for the faint of heart. It is really, really difficult. And we knew that going into it. And so this isn't like a sob story of like, oh, poor Tyler. But there were Sundays where I would wake up to drive, you know, early in the morning to get everything set up. And I would kind of just start like crying, like, because I was like, no one's showing up today. No one's going to be there. Like, why am I doing this? And lo and behold, like God would fill the room, you know? And it was a really cool thing to see, like, man, like Tyler, he's got you. Like all you have to do is just focus on today. And so I think it's so important to be connected to a church to where you can meet people who are older than you that can speak into those things. Because it's really hard, like at your age, because you haven't, I mean, some of you, like some students have gone through a lot, you know, even though they're 20, 21 years old, but most 19, 20, 21-year-olds, like life hasn't been super difficult.
Yeah.
And so when you get to the point where it's like, man, I don't know what comes next, you kind of find yourself going, I know what the Bible says, but I'm really struggling to believe it, right? If you have people in your life that can look at you and go, hey, I was in your shoes and I can tell you, like, this is what God does. Like, this is, like, he is faithful to his word. He's faithful to his promises, and he moves. Like, you need those people in your life. And so, I mean, I think one of the most important things is just, like, getting connected to a body of believers with people that are older than you that you can talk to. You know, home groups, things like that, where you have adults that can like tell you these things, right? I remember in college, that was like, I don't remember anything that was taught, but I remember the adults in that ministry that poured into me, and just loved on me. And so I would say, like, for me, that has to be first and foremost. Like, you need people that can reaffirm, like, this is what God does, you know? I don't know if that answers your question, but.
I thought that was good. And I think that's kind of a lesson that I've been learning myself over the past, how long have I been here? Year and a half?
Yeah.
Because I come in, you know, whatever, newbie, walk straight up to Tyler. I'm like, hey, I know you don't know me, but let's chat. And then we got coffee, and then the rest is history. But I have been fortunate enough to, develop a really good relationship with his wife, Kylie, and Kelly Martin, who's here. And also just a bunch of different people who are older than me in the church. And I have just, one, learned so much from them. But two, like, there have been so many situations where I'm like, y'all, I don't know what to do. And it's been that same thing of like, hey, I've been in a situation similar, and like, this is what the Lord did for me. And like, I'm confident that he'll do it for you. And so I think sometimes, especially like, we're not kids, but for kids our age, like, it's really just like, one, nice to have someone who will listen. Because I feel like a lot of times kids our age, they always want to like, not necessarily one up, but it's always like oh, well, this is going on with you. Well, this is what's going on with me, which that's not necessarily bad, but sometimes you just need somebody to listen. And I think that, they do a really good job of listening. And then two, like, they really offer like Bible-centered, this is what the Bible says, not, oh, I feel this way. And, because I find myself doing that quite a bit, and I don't mean to, but it's just that like maturity component of it, I feel like. And so I feel like a lot of times people want to make you feel better. Whereas like I've had a lot of conversations with Kylie and Kelly where they're like, Ryan, no. And I low-key got my feelings hurt, you know what I mean? But sometimes you need that. So I don't know. I think mentorship is a great thing, and that could be a whole other podcast, but I think a lot of people our age don't utilize that, and I think that people's lives would be drastically different if they did.
Yeah.
So
I agree. We got just a few minutes left. Anything else that I think that you're like, man, here's what, like, if you're listening as a college student that's listening to this, if you left with one thing either from last night or today, and I think we've kind of hit on it a little bit, right? Like the mentorship thing, I think is really, really important. What is it, do you think, like, man, here's where to start, right? Like, this is what, if I was in your shoes, like, here's where I would start. It's kind of open-ended, but
I think when I first really was wrestling with like, waiting stinks, waiting sucks, what am I supposed to do? I think the Lord like really opened my eyes to like think just about the gospel. Like, y'all, if you really think about it, Jesus died. 3 days of silence. Whoa! Talk about waiting. Oh my gosh. I would have thought like all hope was lost, and like, my situation wasn't going to get any better because this person claimed to be the Messiah, and lo and behold, he wasn't. But like after that 3 days of waiting, what did God do? He showed up. And so when I like am in all these situations, I'm like, okay, I can find rest. I can find comfort in just a simple truth of the gospel, because I think it really does speak, one, to a lot of different things. But I think like when you think about it from that side of it, like the Lord is like with us in our waiting. And I think like every time he's going to be faithful, kind of like what we've talked about.
yeah.
And so I think it's just like a muscle you've got to work and get strong at, because it's one of those things like you're not going to be great at it the first few times you do it. And even when you're old like Tyler, you may not be great at it. So I don't know.
Old. No, it is a learning process. And I think it's something that you'll continue to learn until Christ returns. Unintentional rhyme.
Hey.
Let's go. But yeah, no, that's a good word. Hey, we've really enjoyed just kind of hanging with you for a little bit. Man, like and subscribe to this podcast. I don't know where you do that, but do it. Man, we love you guys. We're always praying for you. We hope you have a great day. You were sent.